Hi everyone, this is a walkthrough of Alteryx and Access, Microsoft Access for the purpose of doing auto analytics. And so I want to just start from the very beginning. And so we're going to use software that's available on Apporto. So you go to apporto.uncc.edu, and this is going to be a cloud-based environment, cloud-based virtual environment. So I'm already signed into my browser. You can see up here my picture is already logged in. So you might have to go through a separate login process if you haven't done that already, just using your UNCC username and password. And we're going to open up that virtual desktop. And again, this is a virtual environment, so that means somewhere where there's a server someplace that houses this software and actually houses any data for our particular user profiles. And so you can't, so if you open up one of the software through this environment, you can't access your local hard drive. So first you have to upload any files you're going to use. So you can just click on this cloud with the up arrow to upload data sets. If you want to download data sets onto your personal hard drive, then you'd use the file download. Okay, I've already done this twice for different sections, but uh, if you look at the auditing, so I put mine in a folder, just try and organize a little bit. So you should have 5 um, Excel sheets and 1 database. Those are all on the Canvas um, module page for the auto analytics topic. So the database has just each of these um, as tables. So these 5 Excel spreadsheets are all captured in the database. They're just different ways of looking at the data. Okay, so you can see we've got the customer table and the product table, sales sales detail, and salesperson. Okay, and this example is from a textbook store, which I figure you all have had some exposure to, and it's just for 1 week's worth of transactions. Okay, so the nice thing about the database um, management system, which is what Access is that you can define relationships right between these tables, and that's an advantage you have in Access relative to Excel. Um, and so, just a reminder, right? When you're looking at a given table, you're going to have to identify a primary key, which is the unique identifier for that table, right? So if you look at the customer table, you have all this information on the customers. Customer name's never a great um, column to make your unique identifier. A lot of times we just create these auto-generated numbers that become customer numbers. And so that's the primary key. It uniquely identifies the record. Sales table has the same thing. But if I want to connect these two, I would define a relationship by dragging the ID and then dropping it into the matching column of the customer ID for the sales table, right? So this becomes a foreign key in this table. It's a primary key over here. Okay, so um, the relationship is defined after you connect those. If you have to be careful, if you right-click anywhere besides that line, you're going to get a different option. But you want to right-click directly on the line and click Edit Relationship, and you see that it's connected because we have a common element, right? We have the customer ID from that customer, or we have ID from the customer table, and we have customer ID from the sales table. Those contain the same data. Um, and notice here we got relationship type is a one-to-many, so that just means every customer could have multiple sales transactions, but for each sales transaction, there's only one customer. Okay, so that's the relationship. All right, so the reason we need to know these relationships is because they help us to think about how we're going to do joins when we want to join information together, right? So what are the things that we need to connect the tables by? And they also help us to understand what do I need to do if I want to get additional information. So let's say I wanted information for a given customer, what kind of sales have they had, and what products have they had. Well, I've got to follow this link all the way from this customer table through the sales table, through the detail table, through the to the product table. Okay, and so you need to understand the relationships to be able to pull out the information you need from a database. And most accounting information is stored in databases. That's usually the typical structure. It's not in a bunch of Excel sheets. It's not in some other unstructured types of data. The main data for transaction processing systems is stored in tables. Okay, so um, if we look at the detail table, um, this is here because the relationship between sales and product is not a one-to-many, it's a many-to-many, right? So for each sale, it can be, it can, you can sell multiple products, right? So think about textbooks. You can go to the textbook store and buy, textbooks for each of your classes, right? And so that's a one-to-many. Or excuse me, you can have many in this direction. But then think about a given textbook that they have. Well, a given textbook could be sold to lots of different individuals, right? And so it can be part of many sales transactions. And so we have, in that case, a many-to-many relationship. So we can't show many-to-many relation, or we can't define many to relationships directly. Instead, we have to split that out into two one-to-many relationships. So we create this what's called a linking table. You can see that there. And all the linking table has in it is a unique identifier, but then it has the foreign key of sales ID, which is this primary key, and it has the foreign key of a product ID, which is this primary key from the product table. And then the any attributes that are unique to that combination, in this case it would be quantity. Okay, so if we look at the sales detail table, this is what it looks like, right? So this is the primary key, which is just, again, an auto numbered identifier. And then we have for every sales um, ID what products is associated with, right? So we have for this first sales transaction, right, we have textbook 2 and textbook 3, right? And we have one of each. And so you can it's able to handle the situations when there's more than one textbook. If you think about the sales table, and this actually, I need to hide this. Okay, magically I made that disappear. And this is just an example. We obviously, in a real scenario, we're going to have to collect more things, right? How much was paid, the amount of sales tax that was charged and collected. There's other details that we would add to this in a real life scenario, but just roll with me for a minute. And so we've got this sales table. Well, the nice thing about Access is you can see which textbooks are associated with it. But the only reason it knows to do that is because we've defined the relationship between sales and sales detail. And so when I'm looking, at my sales table, it says, okay, I've got this salesperson, or this sales ID number 1. Let me see which records are associated with sales ID 1. And it says, okay, product ID 2 and 3 with one quantity each. And so that's what it can show me. It shows me a little snapshot of that table. And again, that's only because I've defined the relationships. It's not technically part of the sales table. The database is just showing this view. Okay? So again, we need to understand these relationships to know, one, how the information is structured, and how can we extract the information we need. Okay? All right. So that's a little bit on Access. There are ways to do queries in here, and we could do some queries. And so we'll start with that next, and then I'll move on to Alteryx.